The 15th of August 1947, India was free. But before this story ends, answer one question. Who gave India that freedom? Gandhi? Nehru? Subhas Chandra Bose? Bhagat Singh? No. Not because these names mattered less, but because no 4 names, no 40 names could possibly contain this story. For 15 reels, we followed the great turning points. But between those turning points were people. People who fought in kingdoms, forests, villages, factories, prisons, courtrooms, secret rooms, and battlefields. Some became national icons. Some survived only in regional memory. Some died before India even had a national freedom movement. And many never lived to see the flag rise. This one is for them. Long before Congress, long before Gandhi, even before 1857, the East India Company's expansion was already meeting resistance. In the south, Pulithevar became one of the earliest major rulers to resist company-backed expansion. He had no national party behind him. He simply refused submission. Velu Nachiyar of Shivaganga lost her husband and her kingdom. She went into exile, rebuilt her forces, forged alliances, and fought to reclaim what had been taken. Beside her stood Kuyali, remembered for extraordinary sacrifice. Then came Mysore. Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan turned Mysore into one of the East India Company's greatest military obstacles. Across 4 Anglo-Mysore wars, Mysore fought the company's expansion. In 1799, at Seringapatam, Tipu Sultan died defending his capital. But resistance did not die with him. In the forests of Malabar and Vayanadi, Pajahasi Raja waged a prolonged guerrilla struggle against British authority. In Tamil country rose Veerapandiya Kattabomman, the Maruddu brothers, and Dheeran Chinnamalai. Different rulers, different grievances, the same expanding power. In Odisha, Bakshi Jagabandhu became the central leader of the Paikam uprising of 1817, as Paikas and others rose amid dispossession and changes imposed under company rule. In Karnataka, Kittur Chennamma resisted British interference in the succession of Kittur. She was captured. But the resistance continued. Her commander Sangoli Rayanna carried on the armed struggle until the British executed him in 1831. Far to the northeast, in the Khazi Hills, Tirot Singh resisted British expansion into Khazi territory. The empire was learning something. Conquering territory did not mean conquering resistance. Then, in 1846, another uprising erupted in the Rayalaseema region. Jallianwala Narasimha Reddy rose against company rule amid the disruption of the old local order and loss of traditional privileges. He rallied thousands and fought through the rugged countryside. He was eventually captured. In 1847, the British publicly executed him. Another rebellion ended. The anger did not. Then came the Santhal Hool of 1855. Sidhu Muramu and Kamhu Muramu, together with their brothers Chand and Bhairava, led a massive uprising against exploitation involving moneylenders, zamindars, police and colonial authority. Thousands rose. Its leaders would never live to see India free. And then, 1857, Mangal Pandey, Meerut, Delhi, Jhansi, Kanpur, Lucknow. A rebellion became an explosion. That full story belongs to story verse 4. But remember this, 1857 did not come from silence. Before Meerut rebelled, before Delhi rose, before Jhansi fought, resistance had already been burning across this land for generations. Kings fought, queens fought, tribal communities rose, peasants rebelled, warriors disappeared into forests. Some died on battlefields, some inside prisons, some at the gallows. And most of them never lived long enough to see a country called Independent India. So how did a company that came here for trade become powerful enough to provoke all of this? Go back to story verse 1, 2 and 3. Because to understand the rebellion, you first have to understand the conquest. (1857) was crushed. The company disappeared as India's ruler. British rule did not, so resistance changed its language. The sword was joined by the argument. Dadabhai Nauroji exposed the drain of wealth, the systematic economic transfer colonial rule imposed on India. Around him grew organizers, Surendranath Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta. They built associations, newspapers, public meetings, and the slow machinery of constitutional pressure. Then came leaders who believed petitions alone were not enough. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpati Rai, Bipin Chandra Pal. Tilak turned festivals into political classrooms. Pal preached Swadeshi. Lajpati Rai mobilized Punjab. Aurobindo Ghosh became one of the strongest early voices for complete independence. Annie Besant, born in Ireland, made India her cause. Alongside Tilak, she drove the Home Rule movement across the provinces. While political nationalism grew in the cities, another rebellion rose in the forests of Chota Nagpur. Birsa Munda, still in his 20s, became the center of the Algulan, the Great Tumult, against systems that had dispossessed tribal communities. Arrested and imprisoned, he died in Ranchi jail in 1900 at the age of 25. He never saw Swadeshi, never saw Gandhi, never saw independence. Yet generations still call him Dhati Aba, father of the earth. How India moved from petitions to Swadeshi, boycott, and mass nationalism is the journey of Reels 5 and 6. Another generation appeared. Young, impatient, increasingly unwilling to believe British power would disappear through petitions alone. Across the oceans, Indian migrants built the Ghadar movement. Among them was Kartar Singh Saraba, arrested, tried, and executed in 1915 at the age of 19. Bhagat Singh would later deeply admire him. Bengal had already produced Khudiram Bose, hanged in 1908 at barely 18. Then Kakori, 1925. Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaqullah Khan, Rajendra Lahiri, and Roshan Singh targeted government money to finance the underground. The state answered with trials and death sentences. 4 men walked to the gallows, a Hindu revolutionary, a Muslim revolutionary, and comrades bound by the same cause. The next generation carried the underground forward. Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev, Batukeshwar Dutt, Jatin Das. Their full story is Real 11. Revolution was not confined to the north. In the eastern Ghats, Alluri Sitaram Raju became the central figure of the Rampa rebellion. Tribal communities resisted forest laws that destroyed their livelihoods. Raju used guerrilla warfare. For years the hills held out. In 1924, he was captured and executed. He was around 26. In Chittagong, Surya Sen, Mastada, led young revolutionaries in a daring attempt to seize British armories. Around him stood extraordinary young women, Preetilat Vaddedar and Kalpana Dutta. Preetilat, wounded and facing capture after an armed attack, took cyanide. She was 21. Surya Sen was later hanged in 1934. Another man carried an older wound across continents. Uddham Singh had lived through the era scarred by Jallianwala Bagh. 21 years later, in London, he assassinated former Punjab Lieutenant Governor Michael O'Dwyer. He was hanged at Pentonville Prison in 1940. He never saw August 1947. To understand why Amritsar could stay inside one man for 21 years, go back to Reel 8. To understand why another part of India chose mass non-violence, watch Reels 7, 9 and 10. Different weapons, same empire. Not every resistance looked alike. Not every region followed the same leader. Not every fighter believed in the same method. On the northwest frontier, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan built the Khudai Khidmatgar, the Red Shirts, a disciplined Pashtun movement committed to non-violent resistance. A society stereotyped as inherently martial produced one of India's most organized non-violent forces. In the northeast, Rani Gaidan Liu entered resistance while still extraordinarily young. Arrested and given a life sentence, she spent years in prison and was released only after independence. Women were never merely standing behind the men. They marched, organized, went underground, faced prison and died. Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, Suchit Kripalani, Aruna Asaf Ali, Ush Mehta. In Bengal, Matangini Hazra, in her 70s, marched toward the police station carrying the national flag. Police opened fire. She died during the march. In Assam, Kanakalat Barua, 17 years old, marched with the tricolour toward Gopur police station during Quit India. Police fired. Kanakalat fell. The flag did not. The story of 1942 is not only the story of leaders being arrested. It is also the story of the people who stepped forward because the leaders had been arrested. That is Reel 13. By the 1940s, the roads of resistance that had crossed this story were beginning to converge. Not into one organization, not behind one leader, and not around one method. Inside India, mass resistance, underground networks, workers, students, political prisoners. Outside India, an army. The story had travelled beyond India's borders. Rash Behari Bose had spent years building revolutionary connections abroad. Then came Captain Mohan Singh, associated with the first formation of the Indian National Army from Indian prisoners of war and expatriates in Southeast Asia. And then, Subhash Chandra Bose. Under Bose, the INA was reorganized and given a far larger political and military purpose: to fight British power and attempt to reach India with an army carrying the demand for independence. And within that army stood something extraordinary, the Rani of Jhansi Regiment. Women in uniform, women undergoing military training, women entering a space from which colonial society had rarely imagined them. At its head stood Captain Lakshmi Swaminathan, later Lakshmi Sahagal. The INA marched toward India. Its forces fought alongside the Japanese through the Burma campaign and on the Indo-Burma frontier. But the military gamble failed. The advance collapsed. The war ended. The INA had lost its battlefield. Then the battlefield moved to a courtroom. At Delhi's Red Fort, INA officers were placed on trial. Among the first and most famous defendants stood three men: Shah Nawaz Khan, Prem Kumar Sahagal, Gurbaksha Singh Dhillon. Three officers, different religious backgrounds, standing together in the same dock. The British meant to put the INA on trial. Instead, the trials helped ignite enormous public sympathy across India. The defeated army had returned, not through victory on a battlefield, but through politics, newspapers, demonstrations, and public imagination. That full gamble belongs to Reel 12. Then came another warning. February 1946. Bombay. Ratings of the Royal Indian Navy rose in revolt amid grievances over conditions, treatment, and wider political discontent. Among the names associated with that uprising were B. C. Dutt and M.S. Khan. What began in Bombay spread. Ships, shore establishments, Karachi, Calcutta, other naval centers. And suddenly the colonial state faced an unsettling image. Indian personnel inside one of its own armed services were refusing obedience. But this is where history must resist a convenient ending. The naval revolt did not, by itself, end British rule. Neither did the INA. Neither did Quit India. Neither did revolutionary violence. Neither did constitutional negotiation. Neither did Britain's exhaustion after the Second World War. There was no single final blow. There was accumulation. Decade after decade after decade. Political resistance. Economic resistance, revolutionary resistance, mass movements, workers' mobilization, international pressure, military challenge. And Britain itself emerged from the Second World War weakened, indebted, and governing a world very different from the one in which its Indian empire had been built. By 1945 and 1946, all those pressures were beginning to occupy the same historical moment. But even now, there was another struggle that cannot be placed neatly beneath the word independence. Because removing British rule raised a harder question: freedom. For whom? One of the men who forced India to confront that question was B.R. Ambedkar. His battlefield was different. He spent decades confronting caste oppression, untouchability, political exclusion, unequal representation, and the denial of dignity to millions. He organized, he wrote, he negotiated, he challenged institutions, and he frequently disagreed, sometimes fundamentally, with the dominant nationalist leadership, including Mahatma Gandhi and the Congress. That distinction matters, because Ambedkar's struggle cannot simply be folded into the same political path followed by Gandhi, or Bose, or Bhagat Singh. During the 1940s, Ambedkar also served as Labour member of the Viceroy's Executive Council. His methods were institutional and political. His central question went deeper than who would inherit power when Britain departed. What would independence mean if millions of Indians remained unequal inside independent India? Political freedom could remove foreign rule. It could not automatically destroy caste. A flag could change. A government could change. A constitution could be written. And still, social hierarchy could survive. That was the uncomfortable truth Ambedkar forced into the argument about India's future. So, as the empire approached its final years, India was fighting on two horizons at once. Who would rule India? And what kind of India would they rule? The answer to the second question would continue long after the answer to the first. Ambedkar would later become chairman of the drafting committee of India's Constituent Assembly, playing a central role in shaping the constitution. But that belongs to the India that came after British rule. For now, the clock was running out on the Raj. Inner trials, naval revolt, cabinet mission, constitutional negotiations, communal crisis, the decision to transfer power. Different pressures were now colliding with the same ending. That final countdown belongs to Reel 14. And then, after generations of resistance, after competing visions of freedom, after arguments over nation, equality, representation, and power, came the moment millions had imagined, but almost none could fully predict. 1947. Freedom. But freedom arrived carrying another word beside it: partition. And that belongs to Reel 15. Now look back. 15 reels. A trading company arrives. Plassey opens the door. Territory becomes revenue. Revenue builds armies. 1857 explodes. The company disappears. Organized nationalism rises. Bengal is divided. Swadeshi spreads. Gandhi returns. Amritsar bleeds. Millions stop cooperating. Salt becomes rebellion. Bhagat Singh walks toward the gallows. Bose raises an army. India says quit. The empire weakens. Partition arrives. And finally, midnight, the 15th of August 1947. That is the spine of the story. But the spine is not the whole body. Between those great events stood millions of human beings. Some carried swords, some carried petitions, some carried salt, some carried secret messages, some carried flags, and some carried nothing but the refusal to obey. A queen lost her kingdom and returned with an army. A tribal leader died inside a colonial jail. A 19-year-old walked toward the gallows. A revolutionary chose his last bullet over surrender. A Pashtun chose non-violence. A young woman carried a secret radio into an underground movement. A woman in her 70s walked forward with a flag. A 17-year-old did the same. A farmer refused revenue. A worker left the mill. A student left the classroom. A prisoner refused food. A soldier began asking whom he was really serving. And somewhere behind each of them, a family waited for someone who might never return. But resistance was not fought only with marches, prisons and weapons. Sometimes a nation was being imagined with a pen. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee gave a growing movement words that would become a cry. Vande Mataram. His hymn, embedded in Anandamatham, went on to become a powerful nationalist refrain. Rabindranath Tagore gave another voice to India. In 1911, a composition first sung at the Calcutta Congress session began. Janagana Man Adinayaka Jaya He. Decades later, its first stanza would become independent India's national anthem. And while poets gave the nation words, another man worked on its symbol. At Bejawada in 1921, Pingali Venkaiah presented a flag designed to Gandhi. The design changed. In 1931, a modified tricolour with the spinning wheel was adopted. And in July 1947, the Constituent Assembly adopted the flag of Free India. The chakra replaced by the navy blue 24-spoke Ashok Chakram, a song, a symbol, a flag. But none of them belonged to only one person anymore. They were becoming part of a nation. And still, there were thousands more. Tanguturi Prakasham, who stood defiantly before colonial authority. Durgabai Deshmukh, organizer, satyagrahi and institution builder. Duggiral Gopalakrishnaya, who mobilized thousands in Andhra. From other corners of India came names such as Titumir, Peer Ali Khan, Kanaklata Barua, Kushal Konwar, Veer Surendra Sai, Lakshman Nayak, Tirot Singh, Rani Gaidinliu, Senapati Bapat, V.O. Chidambaram Pillai, Tirupur Kumaran. Different regions, different languages, different methods, different dreams of what freedom should mean. And that difference matters. They did not all follow Gandhi. They did not all follow Bose. They did not all believe in revolution. They did not all believe in non-violence. Some fought before modern Indian nationalism had fully emerged. Some demanded reform. Some demanded self-government. Some demanded complete independence. And some warned that political freedom without social equality would leave another kind of unfreedom behind. They argued. They disagreed. Sometimes bitterly. History becomes false when we erase those disagreements. But taken together, their stories reveal something extraordinary. India's struggle cannot be reduced to one man, one party, one ideology, one religion, one caste, one language, one region, or one method. It was resistance, changing shape. A sword became a rebellion became an argument became a movement became mass resistance, and resistance entered villages, forests, factories, universities, newspapers, secret rooms, prisons, courtrooms, and eventually the armed forces themselves. Generation after generation after generation, until the machinery of empire could no longer continue as before. And that brings us back to the flag. When you look at the tricolour, don't ask only, who gave India freedom? Ask something harder. How many lives had to pass through history before this flag could rise? Because there were thousands we could not fit even into this museum. People without surviving photographs. People whose names survive only in village memories, family stories, songs, local memorials, prison records, and graves. The famous deserve to be remembered, so do the forgotten. The 15 reels showed how India moved toward freedom. This museum asks us to look at something deeper, what that journey demanded from the people who lived through it. So go back. Start with reel 1. Watch the company arrive. Watch Plassey, Swadeshi, Gandhi, Jallianwala Bagh, non-cooperation, Dandi, Bhagat Singh, Bose, Quit India, the weakening Raj, Partition, freedom. But this time, when one famous event ends and the next begins, look at the people standing between them. Because freedom was never inevitable. It survived defeat, prison, exile, hunger, bullets, the gallows, and generations of people refusing to accept that foreign rule had to last forever. They did not all fight the same way. They did not even imagine freedom in exactly the same way. But India's freedom story cannot be told without them. And perhaps that is what this museum was really built to remember. Not only the moment the flag finally rose, but the countless lives that carried it there. Thank you for staying with us until the end. This documentary began with one idea. What if history didn't feel like a chapter in a book, but like a museum you could actually walk through? Behind these few minutes were days of research, visual reconstruction, editing, sound, and countless hours of work from me and my team. All for one purpose, not simply to tell you what happened, but to make you feel the history. If even one scene gave you goosebumps, one sacrifice stayed with you, or one forgotten name made you curious, then every hour behind this film was worth it. A like tells us this work matters. A share carries these stories further. And a subscribe helps us build the next experience even bigger. And if there is a freedom fighter from your state, your village, or your family stories, whom you believe deserves to be remembered, leave that name in the comments. Perhaps that becomes a story we tell next. Continue the complete journey with the battle for freedom. Lero, Storyverse, Reel 1 to Reel 16. And follow us on Instagram through the link in the description. Because this museum may close here, but history doesn't. There are still thousands of names, thousands of stories, and countless doors we haven't opened. Thank you for walking through this one with us.